Hello, this is Tony with Phillips Fishworks, and today we are talking about the green water machine. This video is going to be all about green water. It's also going to be about making 5-gallon buckets of green water. So let's get started. You went to phillipsfishworks.com, you purchased a green water machine. What is it? It's a culturing kit that's going to come with everything you need to make this. A gallon of mature green water that you can add to your tank. You can feed Daphne or Moina, all kinds of stuff you can do with this. And it's going to come with enough nutrient or fertilizer to make 3 batches of this green water. All right, so let's see what it comes with. Again, phillipsfishworks.com. Instructions. This is the most important part. They're very detailed. I didn't want to make it too lengthy, but you know, the information is all here. This kit's very easy to put together. You're going to find that out right now. Rigid airline tube. You've got a lid. It's got a little hole in it. This is your green water sample. This is a live algae right here. This is living right now. It's important to, once you get this, use it fairly quickly because this is a live culture and you don't want the algae dying. Got some airline hose in this pack. You've got a pipette. That's to get the nutrient out of the little vial here. This is 15 milliliters of the nutrient. Got a little air valve so we can control the airflow. And little culturing salt. So what is this? I've shown it in a couple other videos. It's just instant ocean. A little bit of this in a bag. This is marine salt. This is to make salt water for marine aquariums. Now we're not turning this into salt water. We're using a pinch. The instructions call for a pinch, and a pinch is literally this. Now you don't have to have this fancy little scoop. You can just use a pinch with your finger. But it's important to not add too much. We're not trying to turn this into salt water. The culturing salt is simply to help buffer the alkalinity. It's also to help add some trace minerals that is beneficial to the algae. So in the instructions, first step is to thoroughly wash and clean jar. You could do that in your sink at home. You could, if nothing else, you need to rinse it with some very, very hot water. It'd be good, you could use a little mild dish soap, rinse it very thoroughly, or bleach it. So step 1 is to clean the jar. Step 2 is to add the green water sample. So I've already cleaned this jar. Now we're going to add this sample. Now that green water can become unsuspended and it can settle, and the water itself will look clear, and there'll just be a little green, looks like green dust on the bottom of the bag. Shake it up. Shake it up, it's fine. We're going to shake it up and we're going to add the green water. Just cut it about halfway. Carefully pour it in. That's the starter culture. You have to have a live starter culture to really make this work. Now we're going to fill the jar to the shoulder here. So we're going to fill it to about this point. There's no line on the jar, but imagine where this starts to curve. The bottom of that curve is where we're going to fill the water to. Now it's about 3 liters or so. See the difference? Brand new culture, mature culture. Now we're going to add the nutrient or fertilizer. This is a special fertilizer. We're going to shake it. This is a fertilizer that's designed to grow single-cell algae. This is what you're getting. This is enough to do 3 batches. This would be enough to do quite a bit more. We sell this separately in these 8-ounce bottles on the website. We sell the kits on the website, and we also sell that starter algae culture separate on the website. All right, so we're going to shake up this algae nutrient or fertilizer. Get the cap off. Right here on this pipette goes to 5 milliliters. We want to take it to 4 milliliters. We're going to squeeze the bulb first. Insert it carefully. You don't want to insert very far or we're going to overflow the nutrient. Let's bring it up. Oh. All right, we're at 4. All right, so we got the nutrient in there. Again, you're going to want to rinse this pipette off. Avoid getting that in your hands. You certainly don't want to get it in your mouth. Tighten that on good. Now we're going to add the culturing salt, which again is just some instant ocean. And we're going to add a pinch. Here's how big a pinch is. It's very small. It's a 1/16 of a teaspoon. Now, you don't need to go out and buy one of those fancy little things. You just need to get a pinch. Something like that is good enough. Could be a hair more. This is not so critical, but you're not trying to make this salt water. And a little pinch is not going to turn it into salt water. We're just buffering the hardness a little bit. We're keeping it from getting too acidic, and we are providing some trace minerals. There's other stuff in here, not just the salt. All right, so that's basically it, other than we need to hook up air and light. But that's all there is to putting it together. Put the lid on. You've got a hole in the lid. That's for this rigid airline tubing. Slide that in. Comes with tubing and a valve. We're gonna just take this and push it over. Goes very easy. Push it on, okay? Put it down in. All right, we've got an air pump. This is kind of a big one. You just need a tiny one for this. You don't need this big giant thing, but that's what I've got. So we've got our hose. We need to put this air valve in line. So we're just going to cut. We're going to cut because we want the air valve up here where we can reach it. You could also put this valve closer to the pump if that's better. All right, now by turning this valve to here, we're completely off. Now we just give it a little bit. That'd be okay, although we want a little more. Something like that's probably great. Now light, what are we going to do for light? Well, we're not going to do anything too fancy. All right, so this is like a cheap desk lamp. Something you could get at like a big box store for maybe 10 bucks or less. Bulb, cheap LED bulb. This one is 5,000K. You want it in that higher end, like 5 to 6,000 would be great, 6,500. You don't want the cold, cool, soft that's in the 2,000. That 5,000K is referring to the color temperature. Bam, there you go. So put this light here, something like that. Works great. Timer. Put it on a timer. You could start with 12 to 16 hours on would be a great place to start. You can experiment with it. It does probably benefit from having an off cycle. So you want it on, off, on, off. You don't want 24 hours a day. If you didn't have the light, you could sit it outside in the sun and experiment with full sun and some shade. If you don't have air, let's pretend you don't have an air pump. You could have this sitting out in the sun and not hooked up to air, and once a day you're going to want to stir it because again, that algae is going to want to settle down in the bottom. It'll stay suspended somewhat, but it'll want to settle as well too. So you want to give it a little stir every day. I am a firm believer the air is going to be your best bet. So if you've already got air, it's great. You know, this is a kind of a bigger pump. You just need a little, one of the tiny cheap ones, something cheap online or, you know, on sale at Petco. But yeah, so we've got air. That air is circulating. That's going to keep the algae moving, keep it suspended. You've got light. a timer. This is, I think, $4 or $5 from a hardware store. This is the cheap manual. You pop the pins up to set the hours, but you want 16 hours would be good, 12 to 16 hours. There it is. Now this sitting like this setup, you saw how quick I put it together. It's not complicated. The instructions spell it all out. I want to, be very thorough. Here is harvesting, maintaining, and resetting the culture. Here's nutrient ratios for 5-gallon bucket, 10-gallon tank, 20-gallon tank. Here's some troubleshooting guide. And again, the website, phillipsfishworks.com. So that's the green water machine. Now I've got more nutrient in here because I can do this, about 3 times with this nutrient. And once you run out of nutrient, you just have to get this and you're good to go. All right, so a note about maintaining. This culture, let's say it's been running for about 7 to 10 days. You're gonna wanna add a little nutrients to it. So I always say at the 7 to 10 day mark, you're gonna wanna add a quarter of your starting amount. So we started with 4 milliliters. Now we're gonna put 1 milliliter in here. This is a growing algae and it needs food. So we're going to squeeze our little bulb and we're just gonna get 1 milliliter. So there's 1 milliliter. All right, now that's kind of feeding that to help maintain it. So this is enough to start 3 batches plus an extra milliliter for each batch. So that's where you start with 15. And again, if you buy a bottle of this, this will last you a long time if you're making little gallons like this. That's how easy it is to put together. Again, 7 to 10 days, this is going to be dark and beautiful and ready to use. All right, so now, this is great. You've got your gallon of green water, that's awesome. But let's say you want to make 5 gallons of green water because you've got a lot of Daphnia to feed, or you want to make some, batches of Moina in the actual buckets and you need to turn that water green first. Well, it's the same exact concept, only scaled up. And that's where this comes in handy. This is your 8-ounce bottle of liquid fertilizer or nutrient. So, same concept. We're going to add green water starter. We're going to add nutrient. We're going to fill this thing up with water. We're going to add a little bit of that culturing salt or the instant ocean. Then we're going to put light and air on it. So let's get started. For a 5-gallon bucket, you're going to want about 1 liter of green water starter. Always shake or stir your green water if there hasn't been air on it for a little while. Because again, it's slowly it may appear green, but it will settle some. So we want to really give that a good mix. Now you could use something like this and measure out 1,000 milliliters, but this is a 32-ounce deli cup. And if you fill this up pretty much all the way to the top, that's pretty close to 1 liter. Again, that's looking pretty good and dark. This water could be gallons of spring water. You could experiment with using aquarium water, used aquarium water. You could use dechlorinated tap water. Try that. I'm using filtered water, so this water comes in from city water, goes through a pre-filter and then a couple of carbon blocks. Similar to what you'd use for an RO, only there's no RO filter membrane. There's no membrane that's going to take everything out. It's just going through those pre-filters, the sediment filter and then the carbon filters. No membrane. I'm not trying to use RO water. I do want the minerals in there. All right, now we're not going all the way up to the very top. I like to cut it off about where these little ridges start because there's going to be a lot of aeration in there and I don't want, water splashing out everywhere. So we're going to come up to about, we'll go a little bit more. It's probably good right there. So we have our water and our live algae sample in there. What else do we need? Culturing salt, instant ocean. And again, just a pinch. Now, a little bit more of a pinch, you know, about 5 times more. But we're gonna go something like this. Maybe not quite all that. Again, not turning this into salt water. This is freshwater algae. We're using the salts for their trace minerals and also maybe a little hardness buffering. So this is available on the website in these 8-ounce bottles. We're gonna shake it up. Open it. Don't wanna spill it. You're basically using 4 milliliters for every gallon. So we're gonna say 5 times 4. Again, we're not all the way up, but it's okay to be a little over. We're gonna say we're gonna need 20 milliliters. Now this is a 10 milliliter dropper, so we're gonna fill this up to the 10 twice. And this is not critical. So it can be a little over, a little less. You know, the bucket's gonna be slightly different volume of water each time because we're not measuring that out. You could put a line on your bucket if you wanted, but it's just not that critical. But you don't need a ton of extra fertilizer. If there's too much, it creates problems and it's wasteful. So we've got our live green water starter, we have the water, we have the salts, we have the fertilizer. That's it. This is, again, done. You could probably put this outside and use the sun if you didn't have a light. Again, you could stir this daily if you didn't have any aeration, but that aeration is going to help. Now, what are we going to do for a light on this? Here's what I have found to be very useful. This I got from a hardware store. This little clamp. Clamp it on. Point it right down at it. You get the idea. We're going to turn it on. It's that same bulb. It's like a 5000K, fairly low watt LED bulb. You can experiment with that. You're going to want to put it on a timer. 12 to 16 hours is a good place to start. And there it is. Now, you could use the same thing. You could use this rigid piece of airline tubing and kind of sink that down in there. If you don't have this, you could use an air stone. That works. If you don't want to do that, or you don't want a bunch of fine bubbles, you can cut this on an angle. This is a 6 millimeter stainless steel nut. And we're just going to fish a few of those on there to weight that down. 4 should be enough because we're going to be blowing a lot of air through there. If you don't have more than 1, it really doesn't hold it down. So there we go. Put that in there. All right, again, you're going to want this light on a timer. 12 to 16 hours on is a good place to start. You can experiment with that time. Maybe more lights helpful, maybe 2 lights. Excessive light does not necessarily make this better. Air is important. Now, sometimes you'll have some algae building up here and there. So you'll have some algae building up on the inside of the bucket, or if you're not using the aeration, you'll have it settle in the bottom. You can take a big giant spoon and stir it up. All right, so it's that simple. And, you know, within a few days, you're gonna see this get significantly darker. Within 5 to 7, maybe closer to 10, depending on your light and lots of other factors, that's gonna be really mature. It's gonna be ready to actually do something with. Always save a little extra of this green water to start new cultures with. You don't want to have to keep buying more starter cultures. Once you have the equipment, which is not a huge investment, you know, this light might be $10. You get a cheap air pump somewhere, a little bit of hose, you know, buy the green water kit. That'll get you started. And then from there, you can make these 5-gallon buckets. Once you have green water, Daphnia and Moina are no problem to raise. That's why we're doing this. Why are we going through all this effort? For Daphnia and Moina, because Daphnia and Moina have the potential to grow in such great populations so fast that you can really feed a ton of fish with them. That's the whole draw of the green water. The green water itself, you can add to aquariums. It will feed some of those micro creatures in there. But Daphnia and Moina will thrive on it. And once you get the green water down, it really is no problem at all to raise Daphnia and Moina and keep them alive long term. This green water is a living algae. So if you're raising Daphnia, it's an infinite food source that's not adding negatively to water quality. So if you've got a bunch of Daphnia and they're growing like crazy, you're going to have to feed and feed and feed. If you're using something like yeast or some kind of dry powder spirulina, that's not alive anymore. That powdered algae you buy from the health food store that you're feeding your Daphnia, it will keep them alive, but it also will add negatively to the water quality. It's going to foul your water very quickly, especially if you're trying to keep up with feeding lots of Daphnia. The live green water, it's infinite food, but because it's alive, it's not fouling your water like yeast and powdered algae will, dry powder algae. So I hope that clears up a few things. I would love it if some people really tried this out. Does the bucket have to be white? I would say yes. Having that white bucket's going to reflect that light in there a whole bunch, and that light reflection is going to allow you to use a lower wattage light bulb. If you've got a dark blue bucket or a dark colored bucket, that's going to absorb a lot of that light, and you're going to have a higher wattage light bulb. When I've done tests with making green water in my blue barrels, I will have some failure where they just failed to start and I really can't get it going, and I've got to really have a ton of light on it. These white buckets, they never really fail me, and I've got low wattage LED lights over them. It's nothing, no highlight, nothing expensive. I don't, I want to make this accessible for everyone, so I've got to figure out a way to do it on the cheap so more people can have access to it. Because once you get this bucket and once you get the green water going, all you're buying is this. You're just buying some fertilizer. You already have the equipment and you're starting your new cultures with your, you always want to save a little bit of this left so you can start new cultures with. But once you get a bunch of it around, it's there, and you just keep making new cultures. You're using buckets, you have some low wattage lights. Nothing is expensive right here, relatively speaking. This is just what you need to get, and this will last you quite a while. You see how much I've used. This was a brand new bottle. That was to make that 5-gallon bucket, so you could make lots of 5-gallon buckets with this one bottle. This is now available on the website. You can also buy the live starter cultures, and you can buy the culture kits. Check out phillipsfishworks.com. Ooh, one more thing. I almost forgot. Let's label this. How do we know, we want to keep track of the dates. Now you can make a spreadsheet and get all fancy, or you can take a piece of shipping tape. Watch this. Clear tape. I'm going to fold the end of it here, and that's going to be for a reason. And I'm going to put this right here. That's 6/7. So G is green water, June 7th. Let's say this was a Moina culture, I could put M 6/7, so Moina, or if it was a Daphnia culture, I'd put D 6/7. With all these dates on here, and then once that gets full, you just rip it off and your bucket's still clean. Now, could you write directly on here? Yes, and then scratch it out, and then you can have Sharpie written all over this bucket, and that's completely fine too. But, I plan on using my buckets a long time, and a little tape goes a long way. Yay!
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.